Welcome to FPTV and welcome to FPTV New Releases for our 12 Days of Halloween strand. Myself, Andrew Sumner, and the mighty Laura Dodd from Forbidden Planet. And it's our pleasure to welcome the supremely talented J.S. Barnes, Jonathan Barnes, to talk about his great new book, Dracula's Child. How are you, Jonathan?
Yeah, I'm great. I'm thrilled to be here, so thank you.
We're very pleased to have you here, and thanks for joining us, mate. What can you tell us about Dracula's Child?
Right, well, yeah, Dracula's Child, my new novel, is an attempt to sort of, answer the question, I guess, as to why Bram Stoker never came back to Dracula. He never wrote a sequel to Dracula. He wrote a lot of other books, a lot of other horror novels, supernatural stories, occult thrillers, stuff like that. Never came back to Dracula. I've always wondered why. And more than that, I've wondered what it would have been like had he had done that. And I guess, this is my attempt to write as authentic a sequel as possible, and to try as much as you can to channel Bram Stoker's own voice.
Yeah, I mean, that is something that's long overdue. Laura, I know that you're a big fan and you've got a ton of questions. So
I do,
over to you.
Thank you very much. And I'm also obviously a huge fan of Bram Stoker. I think that was one of the first horrors I read when I was kind of 13, and I probably didn't necessarily understand all of it at kind of that age, but just wonderful. So
I agree, by the way, mate. I think it's fantastic.
It's a classic.
Yeah,
yes,
it is indeed.
Exactly. But you've kind of managed with Draculas Child to capture kind of the voice and tone of the original, but yet a kind of modernized version. How difficult was this balance to achieve?
Interesting. And interesting as well that you read it at 13. I think I must have been around the same age. I think it's the kind of ideal point, isn't it, at which to kind of encounter the original. But yes, I mean, I think, as much as possible, I was trying to be authentic, and I was trying to channel that late 19th century voice, and obviously I was mimicking the form using
the epistolary nature of the book.
Absolutely, I was trying to do all of that, but at the same time I was writing it in the 21st century, in the world we're in now, with all the weird, strange things that have gone on in the past few years. So inevitably some of that is filtering in, because you're a product of your own times, aren't you?
Definitely. And the immediacy of the kind of journal entries and clippings, like the kind of found footage, is something that's been used quite a lot in horror of late. Is that a style you would use again in the future? Possibly,
yes. I mean, in this particular instance, I wanted to absolutely do the same thing that Stoker had done, and see if I could. It is just a wonderful way of telling a story, I think, because it does mean that very often the reader or the viewer is ahead of the characters. We can see what's coming even when they can't. So you have all that kind of wonderful sort of spooky irony, I guess. It takes a bit of plotting to make sure everything fits together. In the 1890s, and it still is one today.
Mm-hmm. And who would, just interestingly, you were saying about obviously reading it as a teenager, who is your favourite character from the original, and has that changed over the years?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it is a great novel. I've made the case for Dracula to be a great novel in capital letters, bold print and underlined. And I think one of the hallmarks of a great novel, talking about Stoker's novel, not mine, one of the hallmarks of a great novel is the way in which when you come back to it, yes, you do find different things, and the points that seem interesting and striking do change. So as you kind of grow up, in a way, the novel is still, or the piece of art is still there waiting for you. So yes, probably now I think my favourite character is probably Mina Hart. It's quite an extraordinary female character, I think, for the time. Probably when I read it the first time, my favourite character was Jonathan Harker, partly because of the name.
Yeah.
And the most intriguing one, I always think, in the whole novel is Renfield.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. He's a great choice, actually. Of the adaptations that have existed of the world of Dracula, of the novel over the years, which are your favourite ones?
I mean, there's been so many, and I can't claim to have seen them all. I've seen a lot, I think, of them, and all of them, I think, even the really bad ones, capture something. They capture a slither of the original. But there's never been one, I think, that is a really satisfying adaptation of the book. There's something elusive about it. But no, I mean, I love Nosferatu. It's a wonderful film. I love all the Hammers. Christopher Lee is pretty definitive, I think, in the role.
Have you seen the Louis Jourdan BBC version?
Yes, I have. Yes, and I know that's very highly regarded, isn't it, amongst Dracula fans?
Yeah,
and it is pretty faithful as adaptations go. It's pretty close. It's maybe a little bit too BBC.
Yeah, it's very 1970s BBC. Yeah, it really is. I think one of the things that you've been talking about that you've done that few of the movie adaptations ever really managed to capture is that epistolary nature of the whole thing, and probably the one that tries it, gives it the most game try, even though I think it's a very flawed film, is the Francis Ford Coppola version. So they tried to get a flavour of the different missives going back and forth through the way it's cut together, but I've never felt that was a completely successful iteration. Personally, but it's I think you've hit the nail on the head about it. It's a very key thing about Dracula itself. I think I can see why that attracted you for Dracula's Child.
Yeah, there's some wonderful moments, aren't there, in the Coppola version. But again, it's sometimes it feels slightly less than the sum of its parts in a way.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Back to you, Laura.
Yes, yeah. So what was your first foray into horror, either as a child or an adult? Was there a particular film that captured your imagination, or were you kind of, devouring all the Stephen Kings like a lot of people did as teenagers? Was there a particular kind of starting point?
Absolutely. I mean, Dracula would certainly be one. Was a very early novel. Dracula more than Frankenstein, I think, although obviously I love Frankenstein, but it's a more adult book, I think, in lots of ways. I think, as we said, with Dracula, you can read it at 10, 11, 12 and get into it that way. In lots of ways, I think my way into almost all of these sort of types of stories is Sherlock Holmes, which I read when I was very young. I read those stories. And I guess it's those ones that particularly attracted me were the ones that are tinged by horror. So The Hound of the Baskervilles is not far off a horror novel, really. And you read that at 8 or 9, and that's one of the things that really kind of draws you in. But King as well. Yes, you mentioned several generations now have been weaned on his work. He's certainly one of our great living popular novelists, without any doubt at all. So yes, I mean, I've devoured all of those novels, and have done ever since. Although I'm a couple behind at the moment.
Yeah, he's probably one of the most prolific authors, isn't he? So it's very hard to say you've read it. I've read every scene, but I haven't. One of these days, hopefully, catch up. But
yeah. I mean, I sort of respect the standard he usually maintains, despite how prolific he is. It's really quite an incredible thing to watch.
It's extraordinary, and I still don't feel he's quite got his due, really, to be that prolific and to maintain the quality, as you say, but also the variety, the different types of stories that he's able to tell in all sorts of different genres. He's a phenomenon.
Yeah, we on our Titan Books division, we with our hard case crime imprint, we publish some of his noir fiction, hard-boiled fiction, and that's just as good as the horror stuff. He's amazingly versatile. It's incredible.
Yeah, you've got a new one out next year.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, we're really looking forward to that. Yeah, no, can't wait. Oh, good man. Thank you very much. Thanks for your support, Jonathan. No, we can't wait. And mate, you're the author of 3 previous novels, right? Somnambulist, Domino Man, and Cannon Bridge, right? So,
that's right.
And I know you've done tons of audio originals for Big Finish. What's that process like? What's it like working with those guys?
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I've been writing for them for about 8 or 9 years, and it's just fantastic. I mean, you're allowed to sort of play in all these wonderful worlds that they have, and I've written for Doctor Who, Dracula, Sherlock Holmes, Frankenstein, and the people they get to work with them, it's just, I've had actors before my work, of the caliber of John Hurt, Tom Baker, incredible range of actors. No, it's a joy. It's sort of a gift that keeps on giving. Really, it's big. Yeah.
Do you get to be in attendance at the recording sessions?
I have done from time to time. I mean, the least useful person to have around on a recording day is the writer, because they've done the job. And sometimes I think you can slightly get underfoot. But no, I have sneaked in from time to time and sat quietly in the corner and watched them get on with it.
That's awesome. I mean, it must feel amazing. Must just watching the process must be great, but listening to the finished product when you've written it must be incredible. With that, like you say, those amazing casts that they have. Can't think of a greater buzz, really. It must be awesome. Yeah,
I mean, it's a particular privilege to watch them work, I think. And when we did, as you know, I did several Dracula stories for Big Finish, starring Mark Gatiss, who played the Count. And just to watch him work and be able to give, in a couple of minutes, 3 different readings, all of which give a slightly different inflection on my intention as a writer. It's fantastic. Can't say enough good things about them.
Yeah, that's awesome. We spoke to Gatiss for FPTV recently, and I mean, the thing about him, his knowledge also is just knows so much about Dracula, about Sherlock Holmes, about the entire genre, about the history of the genre. He's a thoroughly, very talented man, but fascinating dude. Always got something interesting to say, I think. Laura and I were talking before, actually, about the fact that you teach creative writing. So how has the process of doing that helped you develop as a writer, or what's your experience been of doing that?
Well, it's all part of the same process, I think, in lots of ways. In terms of the teaching and the writing, they sort of click together, I think, because often, in a creative writing setting, in a workshop setting, you learn an awful lot from each other. It's very much a circle. I find it keeps me kind of connected. I have been told, my wife tells me that if I don't do any teaching for a bit, I become quite strange or even stranger. So it keeps me kind of grounded and in the real world of not just making things up.
Yeah. Well, we all need that human connection to keep us on the straight and narrow, and not burrowing too far into our own psyche, which can often be a dangerous thing. Now we're sprinting towards the end of this interview, and Laura has one key question that we've asked everybody for 12 Days of Halloween.
Yes, so we've been asking all the authors involved, and you can be serious or you can be humorous, but what scares you the most?
I think the scariest thing is the stuff that comes from inside yourself, isn't it? The scariest thing is how you would react, I think, if put under real pressure. What would you do? And the sensation that you might not be up to the task. Because often what horror stories are about, I think, are you going to be heroic, or are you going to be someone who's just going to be kind of consumed by the world? I suppose that's the scariest thing, isn't it? The idea that you might not be sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an excellent and actually rather chilling answer. I'm sure that's something we all share. Thank you very much, Jonathan. That was awesome. So this has been FPTV New Releases 12 Days of Halloween, talking to the exceptional Jonathan Barnes about his fantastic book Dracula's Child, which you can order a signed edition of from the links attached to this interview. So thanks very much for talking to us today, mate. Take care of yourself, and we will speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to see you.